Hello. Today I want to talk about yarrow, and I am sitting in the most beautiful patch of yarrow I have ever seen. It's just a circle here, and it's growing everywhere. I'm smashing it down, honestly. There's so many of these little lacy leaves growing just all around the field. In fact, it's more yarrow than there is anything else, and this is in the middle of the hayfield. A lot of you are probably very familiar with yarrow. You can see the lacy leaves. That's one of the ways that I've always been able to identify it, because there are some flowers that look very similar, but it's just always the lacy leaves that get me. And then the smell, it's pretty pungent. Like, once you learn to identify that smell, you just can't not. It's quite pungent, kind of spicy. I've got some sinus stuff going on, so my smeller's not even working entirely proper. However, you can still smell the spicy, I don't know, everyone smells different, but it's definitely spicy, almost like a bitter spicy. But anyway, yeah, the lacy leaves. I've got to where I can see yarrow before it even starts flowering, and eventually you will too. You just got to familiarize yourself with the plants, and the best way to do that is just get out in nature, get out in the field, walk the hayfield, walk the creek banks, get out in it, touch it, smell it, just sit. I used to do this as a child, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've just had such a love for nature and plants and all living things, honestly. I've always been a big animal lover as well. At one point I fancied myself a vet. That's a lot of schooling that I didn't want to. Anyway, we're getting off track. So, I personally harvest this in yarrow. I harvest yarrow, and I use it in teas, tinctures, and salves. Now, for the tincture, I use the leaves and the flowers. For salves, you could honestly use the stems as well. I mean, it's just the leaves and the flowers that I use, but if some stem gets in there, I don't worry about it too much. You can use the whole plant for your teas, tinctures, or salves. For tincture, I always use alcohol. I use 80 proof or higher. For salves and balms, I infuse them in usually organic extra virgin olive oil. My child is in the background riding his bike. You can use grapeseed oil, you can use apricot oil, you can use coconut oil, whatever you prefer. I usually use olive for the benefits that come along with using olive oil. And it tends to be, well, it used to be, on the less expensive side, but now it's gotten a little more expensive. So actually, almond oil is a good option, or grapeseed oil is a good option as well. But I will infuse the yarrow. They say at least 4 to 6 weeks. Oftentimes I end up going over that with my tinctures and my salves, my infused oils. But when you're doing any kind of tincture or salves, infused oils, you usually want to partially dry your plants. Sorry, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background and it's distracting me. Kids are so distracting. Like, they're constantly needing something and have something to say, and they want to show you something. But anyway, they're distracting. I'm trying here. Anyway, so for your tincture, it's not as important to get it completely dry. as it is for your salves and balms, because when you introduce your plants, your dried material, your material to the alcohol, it doesn't so much matter if there's some water content in it. It's not really gonna, it'll dilute it a little, but it's not a big deal. When you introduce moisture from the plants to your oils, that can cause you to have molding and contaminated. So you want to make sure when you're doing your salves and balms that you dry it thoroughly. Like, you really want it dry for that. You don't want it to have all that moisture in it, because it'll cause it to go bad fast. For your teas, you also want it to be completely dry, because you want it to last longer, and you don't want it to mold or anything in your jar. So you want it completely dry. And I mean, you can use it in your tinctures as well. So your best bet is just to completely dry thoroughly your plant for using later in any of your medicinal remedies, teas, or whatever. So you can also take the leaves and dry them and powder them and make like a stop bleed powder. I have not personally tried that. I do know that it does help with bleeding. It can stop bleeding. And usually that is done in tincture form. But I do know that I've heard that it works very well. The powder works very well. You can do like compresses with them. Again, you can use dried herb for that by just getting it wet and making your compress. But it's very good for wounds and healing, like internal healing of things. You mix some yarrow and some plantain and some comfrey together, and you have an amazing healing balm or ointment, or even just the oil. So you haven't gotten your balms made and you sprain your wrist. We hope that doesn't happen, but you sprain your wrist and your oils are still your oils. They're not a salve, they're an infused oil. Take that oil and rub it on. It'll work amazing. In fact, it'll soak in and absorb better and work better than the balm, actually, because it's more absorbent and easier to absorb. Where the balms have like the waxes and stuff, it can make it a little harder to soak in and penetrate. There are these fancy words that I'm just not using. I truly do know them. Penetrate, not soak in. But that's not me. I'm just a plain gal, okay? I'm just me. And I don't always use the right words because I'm just plain. I just use plain words. So anyway, penetrate the skin and the muscle tissue and all those fancy word things that I'm not using. It'll penetrate better with just the oil, the infused oils, versus the salve. So it is a good idea to have some infused oils on the side and not turn them all into salves and balms. So what I personally like to do is have a gallon jar, because I like to have gallon jars full of all my dried herbs. I like to have a gallon jar full of dried yarrow for future use. So make sure when you're harvesting that you have enough to get you through all winter. So, and you can use it for tinctures, teas, whatever. So as long as you have your gallon jar full for use. And then I'll also go ahead and start my tinctures. So I've already got my tinctures and I've got my oils infusing. And then I have the one for teas, or if I run out of tincture or whatever, I'll have extra to make. And honestly, yarrow grows in abundance in most places. It really does. So yeah, it's hard to over harvest. And if it doesn't grow in your area, I do know you can purchase the seeds. Baker Creek, I think it's a Rare Seeds now. I think they changed it. It used to be Baker Creek, but I think now when you look it up, it's like Rare Seeds, Baker's Creek. I don't know. I can't remember. But they do sell yarrow seed. And I'm sure there's other options out there as well. I think Richards, I don't know. Herbs. There's another. Oh gosh, my brain today is not in the game. It has betrayed me. Anyway, I can drop a link if you would like to these sites where you can order the yarrow seed to grow your own, if it does not grow in abundance near you, I can do that for you. Lord, it's the heat. I don't know. Brain fog has been a thing lately. Anyway, so that is what I use it for, and how I use it, and what I do with it. And also, it's just pretty. I mean, it's just pretty. My kids pick me some for flowers, and I want the herbalist side of me wants to go, oh my gosh, we don't want to pick the herbs, but there's so many of them. The mommy side of me is like, oh, thank you, that's so sweet. So there's got to be a balance there. And there's so much of it, like, it's not here anyway. There's so much of it here. Them picking me a bouquet of yarrows, not a bad deal. And sometimes if they pick it long enough, or I don't just get, something like just a handful of the blooms, I can still dry them and use them for later use. But, it is what it is. Anyway, me prattling on here. Have a nice day. Be blessed.